who are very expert in studying, who are very expert in who are very expert in studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the three worlds because they are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Narom Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhirayat Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hari Bol. Everybody, please accept my humble obeisances. All good to Srila Prabhupada. Now, previous weekend, we did lesson 7, but it was too long, and then I decided I would do part of it today. So let's hear the recap of what we did and the part of lesson 7. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. So we started off with lesson 7 in the last class. It was about Kalidas Lahiri Mahashaya's family in Shantipura. So after Lahiri Mahashaya surrendered to Vaishnavadas Babaji and he accepted him as a spiritual master and took initiation from him, there was an unrest when this news became spread in his village in Shantipur, because he was from a Brahmana family. And it was very unexpected that he became a Vaishnava ascetic in Godruma. So he had 2 sons, namely Chandrakant, who was 35 years old, a landowner, and he looked after the family affairs, and the younger son Devidas, who had his own school, as he had studied Nyaya and Smriti Shastra, and he was honored with the title Vidya Ratna. So both were famous scholars and respected in Smartha Brahmin society. And Lahiri Mahashaya's wife too was a very saintly woman. So these rumors were like, some people thought that he is now become a senile old man, and some thought that he is stuck with some disease. There were people who were wondering that he had everything. He was a Brahmin, he's a Brahmin by birth, his sons and wife obey him. What made him take this extreme step? And the other learned people were thinking that because he's a very pious man and he has everything what one person should have, and so now in his old age he has developed a taste for chanting the holy name. So all these rumors greatly disturbed his family, and they decided to do something about it. So having heard these rumors, the 2 sons and the mother, they wanted to protect the family honor, and his wife was worried about his health because it was known that he's become mad after the holy name of Lord Hari. But Devidas assured her that he is in good health, but he has ruined the family reputation because he is eating remnants from men who are wearing loin clothes. And so they were very disappointed with him, and they decided unanimously to bring him back. So it was decided that Devidas would go along with his maternal cousin Shambhunath to bring Lahiri Mahashaya back to Shantipura. So Devidas went to meet his father, and when he went, he saw him chanting holy names on his beads, and his limbs were having 12 tilak marks. And when Lahiri Mahashaya saw Devidas, he was definitely surprised, and he asked him if everything was okay. At that moment, there was Kirtana chanting happening from Premdas Babaji's cottage. So everybody went to participate in the Kirtan. And next day, finally, Devidas got an opportunity to speak to his father and try to convince him to return home. But Lahiri Mahashaya outrightly refused his proposals for giving the reasons that the people in Shantipura are atheists and they take delight in criticizing others, and they are only bothered about wearing good clothes and using pompous words, and they bless him, the Vaishnavas. Thus, he refused to Devidas' proposal. And so, including the argument that he is a Brahman and Brahmana has eternal duties, eternal religious duties, and people of great souls like him should be absorbed in these duties. So then this led to a philosophical dialogue and between the father and son. So Devidas first started saying that Brahmana has eternal duties and religious rituals that he should follow throughout. To this he said, no, these are temporary duties. Only devotional service to Lord Hari is a soul's eternal duty. So then he says, then is chanting of Gayatri not worshipping Lord Hari? Won't this be is not chanting of Gayatri an eternal duty? And is it how is it different from Vaidhi Bhakti? So he said chanting of Gayatri and other karmakand activities are different from Vaidhi Bhakti because they have objectives like impersonal liberation and material benefits, wherein Vaidhi Bhakti is devoid of material motive. And the primary result attained by Vaidhi Bhakti is that one becomes attracted to the lotus feet of Lord Hari, and the soul wants to serve Lord Hari. So then he says, isn't some secondary results also, these are also coming from the devotional service of Krishna? So he said, yes, those who are not true devotees, they perform sadhana bhakti to attain goals like material sense gratification and to cure their diseases and impersonal liberation. But internally, there is a difference of faith. The materialists are in the secondary result, and the devotees attain the primary result. So then he says, then why do scriptures glorify secondary result? So then he says, because Lahiri Mahasaya gives him the explanation that human beings are of two kinds in the material world, the intelligent and the unintelligent. Because there are some people who would not follow the spiritual activities unless they see a material benefit behind it. So for these, the secondary results are also glorified by scriptures. So then he argues then whether Raghunandana and the other authors of the Smartha Shastras are they unintelligent? He says no, they are not intelligent. They themselves seek the primary result, but the code of action they prescribe is meant for the unintelligent. Further, he says that, but in some scriptures only secondary results are described. What is the reason for that? So is it which of these scriptures should one believe then, and how can a person raise from the lower stages? So he says three kinds of scriptures tailor made for people in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. They are faith based. So by faithfully performing the duties for which he is qualified, and by doing sadhu sangha, one becomes one rises one rises, and this is what is described in Srimad Bhagavatam also. So then he again argues that he believes that Vaishnavas are they interpret scriptures their own way, and he wanted to know about the person who has taught him all these about the scriptures. So he says then in the following in the cottage besides is my spiritual master who is worshipping Lord Hari, and he has taught me the meaning of the scriptures, and I want you to come with me and visit him. So this was the first part that we did in the last class. Now in the second, in today's class, we will be seeing Devi Das and Lahiri Mahashaya go to Vaishnav Das Babaji, and their meeting will be described in today's class. Over to you, Babaji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, you are mute.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, everybody can see the screen.
Yes.
Aibo?
Yes, probably.
Okay, so we will continue. As you can see, this philosophical dialogue taking place in three phases actually. First, we heard the dialogue between father and son. Father is Lahari Mahashay. The son, the youngest son that who came there, is Devidas Vidyaratna. Um, and as he was uh, about to, the last question was that where did you learn all this scripture and everything? So that's when I said that I learned from Babaji here, who is my guru. So we'll see an interruption of this father-son dialogue. He's taking him there, and then the dialogue takes place between between the son Devidas and the Babaji, who is spiritual master of Lahiri Mahashay, and then they come back and resume their dialogue. So we'll see in three phases. Okay, one phase you already seen that Samta Mataji already summarized. Okay, so now we will see because Lahiri Mahasaya said that I will in fact take you to introduce you to my spiritual master, and you can meet him, and then you two can have a dialogue, and I'll let you independently and discuss with him. Okay, so this one we will begin with now the son Devidas, and remember he has the title Vidya Ratna, the jewel of all the knowledge. He was very well versed, but the knowledge of all the shastras that dealt with particular Smriti shastras and don't like those like that, which sort of glorify the birth of a Brahmana. So all the gunas, all the qualities of Brahmana are based on the birth, not on the gunas. Okay, so all this knowledge of the son is restricted to that. So when he sees Babaji, so Babaji was first want to know to what extent his ignorance is there, you know. So he asked. So here in this slide, this is what we are seeing. So what I do, what I'm as I usually do when this is such a complex slide, I zoom in it part. So we'll zoom it in parts. We'll see. So first, the left part. Okay. So here, Babaji is asking the question, and the son is replying according to what he's being asked. And then we'll see the son asking the question to Babaji, and Babaji is replying. First part is Babaji is asking question, and Babaji is asking question to make sure to what extent, because remember this Vaishnav Babaji, Vaishnav Das Babaji himself formally was belonging to this impersonalist philosophy. Okay, so he knew perfectly well all those shastras. Okay, and he wanted, and he's now his aim is to find out and let him know where the gaps are there, where the misunderstanding comes from that impersonal philosophy and all that thing. Okay? That was the reason, that was the aim, that was the objective why Babaji is asking him questions. Okay. So we'll first focus on this left block that is given in the yellow box, and then we will focus on the right box here. So there are three basic questions Babaji is asking. Okay, have you studied the scriptures? First, what scriptures did you study? And when he said that I studied Nyaya Sastra, I am sorry about my voice. Um, I take this thyroid medication, and that affects my voice. Sometimes totally blocks, you know. So at least today I'm able to speak, but this hoarse kind of noise is there. I mean, my voice is not as it used to be. So this Devidas is saying that I studied Nyaya Sastra, Siddhanta Kusumanjali, and Smriti Sastra. That typical, that glorifies the impersonalist philosophy. Okay. So then Babaji asked, have you studied diligently? Really, very, very closely with focus? So I say, yes, with faithfully. Uh, so he said, by faithfully executing my prescribed duties with great difficulty. He admits I had great difficulty to understand. Uh, I was seeking impersonalist liberation. That was my objective, and he had been having a lot of difficulties. So the reason was, the son is explaining that this Nyaya Sastra really of that opinion, or that prescribe the notion that Brahman, and the individual soul are eternally distinct. So there is no possibility to renounce everything and attain impersonal liberation, uh, because they are distinct. Okay. Um, but on the other hand, he also is expressing his difficulty because he finds there's a conflict, according to Vedanta philosophy, and that he learned from the Shankaracharya viewpoint. And that we'll see Shankaracharya's viewpoint of Vedanta philosophy is totally different than the Vaishnava point of view, or from the Vaishnava point of interpretation. And that is where it lies, where the impersonalists have a wrong understanding, erroneous understanding. So he says, according to Vedanta philosophy, that he learned from the impersonalist point of view, liberation is defined as understanding that the individual soul and the supreme are not different. That's the typical monist philosophy. That they don't recognize the super soul. They think that the human being, that we, that there's only one Brahman. There's no distinction. So when this Brahman comes under Maya, that's where the problem. But when it is purified, when studying Vedas, uh, the Shastra scriptures, then we come to the understanding. So the wrong misunderstanding that sometimes that means even the Paramatma, super soul, also come under the influence of Maya. That is the fundamental offense committed by the impersonalist. So he says, according to what his understanding, based on his studies of the Sankaracharya monist point of view, he said that there is no difference between the individual soul and the supreme. In fact, there is no indication of the supreme there actually. So, because they are not different, hence impersonal liberation is possible. That's what is understanding. But he has not been able to achieve his impersonal liberation as yet. So now comes the turn of his son asking the question. Um, so first he hears from uh, Babaji. Babaji says, I too have studied the same Shastra that you studied for 15 long years. Um, and that is Sankaracharya's version of Vedanta. And then accepted sannyasa. In fact, I totally dedicated my life for that, preaching that philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. But internally, I was not satisfied. I struggled very hard, like you. I also had the same objective to achieve impersonal liberation, but I was totally frustrated in my efforts. You know, so despite many struggles, I failed to attain impersonal liberation. And then I had no other option but to conclude that this understanding, this kind of interpretation of Vedanta must be wrong. Okay. And it's kind of foolish to explain it that way. So I totally rejected what I had read. In fact, I had to abolish. Remember, you want to have learned a new knowledge, which is quite different. It's a slate. You have to wipe off everything and write, beginning the new interpretation. So he said that's what I had to do. So then Devi Das asked, why did you abandon the desire for impersonal liberation? Okay, at that point. So now he's asking why. So when he was asking that, that's when he explained why Babaji says that I was so totally frustrated because of that. I could not achieve my objective, and that's why I concluded the source of that interpretation was because of the monist view of interpretation. So there must be something wrong. So he added 2 plus 2 actually, basically. So now Devidas is asking, why did you think those books were foolish? Okay. He's asking pointed questions really. A person, so Babaji is responding, a person should examine his own heart. You're asking me to explain, okay? But I'm going to explain what is in my heart. It may not appeal to you because it must come from your heart. And you also went through actually this kind of frustration in but you didn't seem to realize this. He says that how can others do it for him? How can others understand his heart? So Devi said that. So Devi was thinking. Devi means Devidas. Okay. So he's internally thinking. Okay. While Babaji is explaining that I never studied Vedanta. Whatever my knowledge is based on Shankaracharya's interpretation. Okay. So I need to study from Vaishnava point of view also. So realizing that Babaji was honest. Clearly, Babaji was explaining very, very honestly everything. Babaji also said, admitted his own frustration. So Babaji was very honest. And obviously he's intelligent because he mastered all that thing. He became a sannyasi and even preaching 15 long years. So he thought perhaps Babaji may mercifully teach him. And he also heard that Babaji was a born Brahmana and his mind was totally influenced by that only one who is born Brahmana and who later becomes sannyasa, who can truly teach him. And remember, when we start lesson 8, he still has that Smartha Brahmana kind of wrong interpretations and wrong kind of philosophy in his mind that we will see. Okay, in lesson 8. So remember that. Uh, so he thought all this thing, but then concluded that Babaji is right person to learn Vedanta philosophy from him. So then he will have a balanced point of view. On one hand, he has Sankaracharya understanding, and other hand, he now will be equipped with Vaishnava interpretation of the Vedanta. Then he can make his own judgment, which is right, which is not right. Okay. So that is the reason he's asking. So then he said that, am I qualified to study Vedanta? If you think I'm qualified, please teach me the Vaishnava version of Vedanta philosophy to me. So Babaji said, no, you know Sanskrit yourself well. So you can really study yourself uh, by yourself and by the mercy of Premadas Baba, because now he's explaining why Babaji is reluctant to teach him the Vaishnava version of Vedanta philosophy. He said, now I'm totally changed. I am no more the person I was. What I had been that way 15 years, like you. But now I'm totally changed. And I'm changed because of my association with the great Vaishnava Acharya, and that is Vaishnava Das Babaji. And he taught me the right version. Uh, and I'm staying here now. I totally gave up all. So I am no more that person that I was before I had been before. I always chant Hare Krishna. Hence I don't have now an opportunity. My total entire available time is spent in my sadhana. Okay, so I have no opportunity to teach others. So you can study yourself. But he said, if you are interested, I can procure, I can arrange to have a Vaishnav version that is in this last box it's explained. So Rupa Goswami, who is the one of the stalwart disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu personally taught him that, So in fact, Rupa Goswami is forbidden to hear or explain monist philosophy of Sankaracharya. Sunil Mayavadi Bhashana Sarvanash Hoite, So he forbidden. Now I'm in Vaishnava school. So I gave up study of that, the monist interpretation of Vedanta. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught the right one, Rishi Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. Okay. So if you are interested, I can get you that copy, that version, and you can study. And that copy is from Kavi Karnapura. Kavi Karnapura. Sir, you already gave us the background of that. So now, at that point, Devi Das returns to his father and explains to him that I was really very impressed by Babaji. Babaji removed a lot of my doubts, So he reports all this thing, and that is what this slide. So now he resumed his dialogue with his father, Larry Mahashay. So this is the third segment of this philosophical dialogue. Again, I'm going to because this is so much amount of material packed into this slide. I'm going to break it into different segments. Okay. First, the left segment. So this is questions number. Well, the first 8 questions in the first segment of his dialogue with his father. Now that dialogue is being resumed now. So now question 9 through 14 is covered in this segment. So this right segment afterwards. So here the zooming on the left portion, questions 9, 10, 11, 12. So question 9. So now he is again pleading his father. I understand why you are here. Please at least come once to Shantipura, at least if not for my sake, at least for the sake of our mother, who is so chaste wife of you, and she is very much struggling. Please come at least for her sake, But Larry Marsh says, in no way. I made a solemn vow to never ever return home, for even a visit would obstruct my devotional service because of the Smartha Brahmanas and Shantipura that he previously explained. They are so biased against the Vaishnavas and they blaspheme the Vaishnavas. I don't want to come there, So he said, but you can visit me here anytime you wish, So now he's asking another question. Question number 10. We are all servant of the Lord. Okay. And we do not dishonor the holy names. Yes, you're right. Other people in Shantipur may be there, but we are your own family. We are your own blood, and we honor, respect the Vaishnavas, and the holy name too, So I'm always ready to serve all the Vaishnavas, and especially who are our guest, and you are our father. So please, don't you think that we are Vaishnavas? So, and that the father says, the fact that you are saying that you are Vaishnavas and still holding the view of this uh, impersonal philosophy, you cannot be Vaishnava. He said, if you think your activities are the same as those of the Vaishnavas, you are in total illusion. You are really not a Vaishnava. You know. So if you are not a Vaishnava, how are you going to respect the Vaishnavas? Um, because you still subscribe to the Smartha Brahmana philosophy that by birth Brahmana, only by birth, who is, unless and until you take a birth in a Brahmana family, you cannot be liberated. That's what your views are firm. A Vaishnava renounces material duties because your goal is to become liberated. Why? Because why it is on material platform? Because you know the human suffering, material existence, and that is the goal why you want to liberate yourself. So that's a material motive. And that why your dharma is not eternal, is namitika, is temporary. Why temporary? Because that is based, rooted, and your views being Brahmana by birth. So that is by birth, that is your body, that is Brahmana. So obviously that is temporary because your next life you may not be Brahmana. So only for this life, this is well, just like that water ice. Normally water exists in liquid form, but only when it is a freezing temperature, then it exists as ice. But in that ice form, water is there in a dormant way, dormant form. But that ice is not going to continue to stay as ice. It is eventually going to melt again and become water again. So water is the one eternal dharma of that. So same way, your thinking is rooted in being Brahmana by birth, and that is why your impersonal goal is based on material platform. So there is no way you can take shelter of the spiritual duty, which is the one which is eternal. So now he's asking, look at what he's saying, that even Navada Bhakti activities are mixed with materialism. That is the grossest way of thinking, that Navada Bhakti, aren't they all impelled by material motives? Deity worship, we offer the Lord all material things. How can they be eternal then? He's thinking how it's polluted because of the wrong association. He is being associated, he's hearing, his mind is polluted by the monist philosophers there, that Navada Bhakti, because they constantly blaspheme the Vaishnavas. How Navada Bhakti can be on a material platform? Yes, you are rendering the Navada Bhakti by the bodily senses. Probably that is the way he thought it was. He interpreted this on a material platform. But that material interpret senses and the mind to purify and get it on spiritual platform, that is the goal of Navada Bhakti. That totally his son missed that point. So now Baba Hari Mahasaya is telling him, uh, the devotees are the ones who strive for the highest goal of life. Their goal is not temporary. Their goal is ultimately is to develop love for the Supreme Personality Godhead, Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Eternal service of the Lord is the soul's eternal duty. Both the karma kandis to fruit your work. Like that, I told you the example last weekend. And that puja they do, it's for some material motives. Even though that puja they do, it is for the Supreme Lord, but they misses the point. I'm talking about Satyanarayana puja, just as an example. So that is a fruit you activity, That's why it's karma kanda. But same karma can be offered to the Lord. Then that, so now you're linking the Lord through your fruited karma. Then that karma kanda can become karma yoga. Yoga means to linking. Same with the Jnana, when it is speculative, uh, um, um, then it is a Jnana Kanda, and that is what impersonalist viewpoint. Because Jnanis, their goal is to merge with the Supreme. They want to become the Supreme themselves. They don't recognize the difference between Supreme and the individual soul. So that same Jnana Kanda can be linked, then Jnana Yoga it becomes. And ultimately, and of course, the Ashtanga Yogi, they uh, practice this control of the mind and the senses to deep all these asanas and breathing exercises, sitting postures. But their goal is to attain those siddhis, smallest than the small, largest than the large, and all these things. So many siddhis are there. So their goal is also material. But those all these things can be linked again, even Ashtanga yoga, you know, focusing the mind, withdrawing mind from all material pursuits and focusing on and that's what the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita is talking about, exactly the same, the last verse. The devotees of the Lord are the Isha Bhakta. Isha is the supreme God. So that is Bhakti Yoga, the supreme. So now, the second part of it, the right part of it, now he's going to respond about his misunderstanding about Navada Bhakti. Navada Bhaktis are mixed with materialism. Aren't they impelled by material motives? In deity worship, we offer the Lord material things. How can they be eternal? Well, here it is. So we'll focus on these 5 points, how his father is removing those doubts. There are two classes of human beings. One is intelligent, uh, that we saw the intelligent and unintelligent, right? Here is saying those who are interested in the material world, uninterested beings, their motive is material. And intelligent beings, those who are interested in higher goals of life. And he places even impersonalism on higher goals of life. But their impersonalism also limit their goal is partial realization of the absolute truth, Brahman realization, even among them. So the second category of people are further divided into threefold: the devotees of the Lord, the impersonalist, and I told you among impersonal also there are intelligent, non-intelligent beings. But the intelligent beings, their goal is Brahman realization, ultimately merge with the impersonal Brahman, Brahma Jyoti of the Supreme. So they are on a little bit higher platform. They are being intelligent, of course. But still, it is partial because Brahman is the partial realization of the Supreme Lord. There are three phases: Brahman, Paramatma realization, and then Bhagavan realization. Brahman realized person does not have the realization of the Paramatma and Bhagavan. Paramatma realization already has the knowledge of Brahman, but he's again limited to Paramatma point of view only. Only Bhagavan has all three phases and complete realization. So you're impersonalist, you are focused only on Brahman. That's the second kind. The third kind, even Ashtanga yogis, they are a little better than the Brahman because they at least recognize the form of Paramatma. Paramatma has a personal form that is sitting in the heart, localized in the heart. So it's a localized version, are engaged. So these are all engaged in karma kanda activities. The Ashtanga yogis, desiring mystic powers. So the impersonalists strive to become the supreme themselves by the goal of merging the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Okay? So some of them are not sure whether or not the supreme exists. Now this is a very interesting point. We are getting into it. Okay, the impersonalists look at because some of them they do worship the pancha tattva, pancha not pancha tattva, the five kinds of demigod worship. and they include Lord Vishnu also among them. Now, why? Because ordinarily, first part of the training, they cannot focus their mind on something that is beyond form and the qualities. Nirguna, Nirakara. So for them to train to have something in personal form, so they're allowed to worship temporarily. There's five kinds of worship. Uh, Lord Shiva, Mata Durga, Lord Ganesha, Suryadev, and five, of course, Lord Vishnu. So they put Vishnu also in that category, like Khichdi. Many in temples in India, you see that. You go, all the deities will be there, and Krishna or the Vishnu is some in corner. So then ordinary people who are open-minded, they have no knowledge, no way to find out the supreme position of Lord Vishnu. So impersonalists in the beginning, they recommend this. So they use it as a tool only. Once they are able to focus and meditate, then these tools can be renounced and then focus only impersonal. So their ultimate goal is Brahman realization, means the impersonal Brahman realization. You know, and these are actually the followers of the Jnana Kanda. Okay. Now the final question here: what is wrong with temporary kind? So now that his son is asking, so what is wrong? At least temporarily we worship, you know, but ultimately we seeking the eternal truth, aren't we? Since the deity form of the Lord may be made by the humans, is made of material elements, how can it be eternal? The deity is made of material elements, and we worship with the ingredients also all material elements. So how do you call that as eternal? So now his father is illuminating him. He's removing his misunderstanding. The worship of the Vaishnava is eternal. Whom the Lord is eternal. All relation to them is eternal. Even though the Lord accepts to come in material form, material elements, but because we are material, we have this material body to accept our service. Lord willingly accepts material form, but He's all spiritual. And the devotee also, actually, in the material deity form, he does not see in material. He thinks Supreme Lord Himself is there because there's a prana pratishtha is performed there. So devotee also worship not as material, but the all spiritual being there. The Lord is all spiritual. So he removed all misunderstanding in the mind of his son. Therefore, the Vaishnava religion is eternal. Unlike the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personal Godhead is not formless. When you say formless, that he is devoid of material qualities, but he has a spiritual form. Okay. Satchit Ananda, and so are we also. We have this material body, but our spirit soul is also Satchit Ananda, eternity with knowledge and with bliss, but in a minute atomic quantity. That's the difference. We are Anu, whereas Lord is Vibhu, the supreme, limitless. So we seek the worship of the Lord in deity form, because we can, at our level, we cannot see the Lord Himself in spiritual form. So Lord so mercifully accept our service. So let's take a break, 5-minute break, and let this digest in your mind, okay? Yeah, just about less than 1 minute. All right. So now we are going to get another philosophical dialogue. Now we are going to understand the Islam religion from the Vaishnava point of view. So here, a remarkably similar but not without. So about this, let me first just a minute. Just give me a minute, okay? Yes, got it. Okay. So as I told you, now we are going to see something different. Again, it's a philosophical dialogue. So what happened now? Everybody. There's time to chant, and a lot of descriptive portion is there that I'm kind of not spending too much time on that, and getting the real important points in the chapter here. So now everybody's settled, and next day coming. Next day there's a visit of a Qazi. That's a Muslim saintly being, saintly personality, and he is the descendant of Chand Qazi. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a long account of who Chand Qazi was there, and when the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and did his Sankirtana Yajna uh, in public chanting, group chanting, all like that. So the Muslim ruler was not happy and he wanted to ban that, In fact, they broke the Pradanga and everything like that. So when Chand Kazi himself came, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu illuminated all the knowledge and Chand Kazi realized, now I'm summarizing, there's a long, long account in that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But in short, Chand Kazi was so impressed and he recognized Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must be the Supreme Personality Godhead himself, So here you can see these pictures. Chand Kazi is surrendering himself to the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, actually, all these pictures that you see that. So now this particular personality that we are going to meet is a descendant of Chand Kazi. So all this disciplined succession he was taught about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Vaishnava philosophy and all this thing. But now we are going to understand what is the Muslim philosophy, Islamic viewpoint. In many, many ways, strikingly very, very similar to Vaishnava philosophy. But in one fundamental way, it's also there's a stark difference between the Muslim philosophy and the Vaishnava philosophy. And that we will see. That is also they worship the impersonalist, and that also they do it in a uh, way that is so drastic. They don't want to. They don't believe in deity worship because that is made of material. They don't want to give any kind of material form to the supreme being. They also believe supreme being is nirguna nirakara. But here, this descendant of Chand Kazi because Chand Kazi himself was illuminated. He was given the right way of Vaishnava philosophy, so that passed on disciplic succession. So this personality, that a saintly personality, but in Islam, he is coming and visiting this Godruma. Okay, that's what we are seeing. So next afternoon, all Devidas and his cousin Shambhunatha, Lahiri Mahashay, along with uh, um, um, Vaishnavadas Babaji, they all went to Premadas Babaji, and they had a large gathering on the terrace of Babaji's uh, uh, building cottage. So at that time, a descendant of Chand Kazi, the word Kazi means a saintly personality, really. In fact, Acharya also. A, a Brahmana Pushkarini uh, also came there. So he was a visitor. Everyone honorably received him. Everybody stood up and paid their obeisances, the saintly personality. In same way, Chand Kazi descendant, this personality Kazi, also reciprocated in the same humble way, extreme humble way, Dainya Bhav, you know. So, and then Babaji introduces Kazi to all the personalities there gathered there on the terrace of that cottage. So Kazi is saying, now listen very carefully what Kazi says. It is by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya that I have received the mercy of all the Vaishnavas. So see, he had a very high regard of all the Vaishnavas. Lord Chaitanya is the master of my life. I dedicated my life. Okay? I do not do anything without first offering Lord Chaitanya my Dandavat obeisances. So just see, recognize that. And the philosophical dialogue that ensued, that took place between the Kazi, okay, and Lahiri Mahashay. Lahiri Mahashay is asking the question, and Kazi is going to answer. Okay. Now, we all know this history behind Lahiri Mahashay. Remember, he was the singer, right? And Lahiri Mahashay, uh, his name is Kalidas, right? Lahiri Mahashay is himself was well versed with all the Muslim etiquette, because he was in the company of the Muslim rulers, and he knew very well even in the Arabic and Persian language. Okay, uh, so he completely knew all these things. But Lahiri Maharaj is asking question to Kazi for the benefit of all the Vaishnavas gathered there. Okay, so their holy Quran uh, uh, they wanted to understand what Quran says about this particular subject, this particular topic, from Qazi himself, and also the book of the Sufis. Sufis are also saintly personalities. They are the acharyas. So this is the background. Now we are going to hear questions and answer, in which we will learn the true Islam according to their holy book. That is the Bhagavad Gita of Islam, Quran. Okay? Many of the viewpoints are strikingly similar to Vaishnava philosophy, with only one notable difference, that they worship Khuda, the Supreme Lord, they call Khuda, as one who has no form, no qualities. Okay. In that way, that is like impersonalist viewpoint. But this particular Qazi, who belonged to this disciplic succession originating from Chand Qazi, who was illuminated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he had a personal realization that we will see. So it was important for me to give you the background. In that, the light of this background, now you hear what Qazi is explaining. Okay. So again, this is a complex slide. So I'm going to zoom it uh, um, first the left portion and the right portion then. Okay. The left portion, Lahiri Maharshi is asking Qazi. He knew very well, of course, everything, because he was well studied in Islam religion and everything. But for the benefit of all the Vaishnavas who gathered there on the terrace. Okay, so he's asking, what is your viewpoint? What is the Islamic viewpoint on the liberation? So that we are going to hear. Okay, and then the other questions. So we'll focus on the left portion that's shown here. So Qazi, so this is a philosophical dialogue between the Qazi, who is answering the questions of Lahiri Mahashaya. So his first question was, what is your idea, Islamic viewpoint of liberation? And now we are going to hear such a striking similarity. I was really amazed. So Qazi begins, the Jiva, or the individual spirit soul, we call Ruh. Actually, Ruh literally means something that is not visible, but in a subtle body, subtle form that we see. Okay, spirit. You know, so that is Ruh in Islam, uh, and Chit, that is spirit actually. So Sanskrit version, Islamic version, corresponding Islamic words, but the meaning is exactly same. And Islam we call spirit soul as Ruh, and the spirit Chit is called Mujarrad. Mujarrad, no, I may not be pronouncing right. Okay, which is beyond material time. That means spirit soul is eternal. Exactly the same understanding we Vaishnavas have that. Okay? That's a spirit soul. But this material world, and that in Islam it is called jasma. Jasma literally means just jism means this material body, material world. Okay. The environment, material environment, is subject to the time control. So there's a beginning of the creation of material universe, maintenance for some time, and then dissolution. So it's all very, very it dependent on the time, beginning and the end. So it's not eternal. So that we call in our language, Muslim, Arabic, tarki, tarkibi ruh, tarkibi ruh. That means the Baddha Jiva, the Vaishnava version, or the conditioned soul. The soul constitutively is eternal Satchit Ananda. But when the soul comes in material existence by Maya, then it has become conditioned. Baddha. Baddha means tied up in the three modes of material nature, whose mind is full of material ideas. Okay. So you see how strikingly similar. And the Mujarrad Ruh, the body, physical body, become liberated soul is free from this contamination. When become freed, then become like it regains its original spiritual form. The soul always remains spiritual form, but in material contamination, tarkibi ruh then becomes conditioned, but then it can become freed. And that's Mujarrad Ruh, the spirit soul that we saw on the upper box. And we call Alam Misal. Alam Misal what? I am spirit who is able to become Mujarrad Ruh. That I am spirit soul. Momentarily I come into the existence, material modes, Maya, but then I will become liberated soul, Mujarrad Ruh. Fifth point. By the gradual development of Ishq, actually, Ishq word you must have heard from the Bollywood movies, right? There's the love between the young boy and a girl, but on a, actually real meaning Ishq is on the spiritual platform. Okay, so the Ishq means love of God. That love you cultivate, develop for the Supreme God, Khuda. You know? So that we also, Chan Kazi's descendant is saying, Kazi is saying that we also have this conception, notion that we develop ishq for Khuda, spiritual love. The ruh, the soul, becomes then purified. Point 7, the soul and God, Khuda, have eternal relationship. Exactly same what we Vaishnava thinks, which is liberation. We ultimately go back to the Supreme Lord. The Sufis explain, as they say, that our acharyas, our saintly people, personalities, they do explain Quran in this particular way that I just summarized you. But not everyone is able to understand properly, just like in Vaishnavas. Ordinary beings, they don't understand real Vaishnava spirit, Vaishnava understanding. Next slide. So now further questions, Larry Maisha. What is the teaching that the root of the Quran, at the base of your Quran? What is the root understanding? So Qazi is replying, while there are many teachings in the Quran, like Bhagavad Gita, Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, Jnana Kanda, Jnani Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and all these things, ultimately Bhakti Yoga, right? So in Quran also, long viewpoint is there, different stages are there, like a yoga ladder. So while there are many teachings in the Quran, but I'm going to focus, Qazi says, exactly what is the point in discussion right now, what is relevant to all of you. The purpose of life is to worship God. The ultimate objective, the root of Quranic teaching is to develop love of God. Exactly the goal of the Vaishnavas. Love of Sri Bhagavan Krishna. When this Khuda is not any different, what we call Krishna, they call Khuda. There's only one Supreme God. When they see the supremely blissful Supreme Lord, everyone experiences the transcendental bliss. Lord Chaitanya too explained it that same way. Then the next question comes, question 3. How does the Quran describe the form of God? Now here, it is different, drastically different from Vaishnava point. Here, it's like impersonalist view, okay? But with little qualification, and I'm just going to point out, God has no form. There's the fundamental teaching of Quran, and they are very, very fanatic about it. And that's why they hate Hindus, because we worship deity, but they don't understand that the deity form we do not, because we are material beings, because we have this material body, even though we are spiritual beings, to offer a service through a body. That is the reason we this material form of the Supreme Lord. But we, in our mind, we know that deity is actually spiritual. That is the point the Muslims misses. And they they break all the Hindu temples and everybody like that, because they say that we give material form to the Supreme Lord, their Khuda, and they say Khuda is no form. But Lord Chaitanya, he says, this Qazi explained that God has no material form. When we say no form, so Qazi himself, coming from the disciplic succession of Chand Qazi, who was trained, illuminated, enlightened by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he had correct understanding, and that is passed on in a disciplic succession. So this Qazi also had understanding, he says. So the Prophet himself, in fact, Muhammad Paigambar, Paigam means message. Paigambar is the messenger, and he had the direct realization of the Supreme Lord face to face. So he knew original Khuda as a form. But we have our material limitation. We cannot come up with that spiritual form. That's the reason we don't want to give any material form to Khuda. The Prophet himself saw the spiritual form of God, which is full of transcendental love. He also described all the rasas, Muhammad Paigambar, but only in a concealed way. So all his disciples did not, Muhammad Paigambar did not want them to misunderstand that. So he kept it hidden. Same way, again, we see some similarity with Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya himself is the incarnation of Lord Shiva, who is the greatest Vaishnava, but he kept hidden from his followers the personal form of Shri Krishna, Bhajagovindam. And he gave this monist philosophy, and his followers did not understand that. So now the final question Larry Mahesh is asking, what do the Sufis say, your acharyas, the saintly acharyas? What do they say? And are you a Sufi? But this Qazi is extremely humble person, Dainya Bhav. Even though he clearly we see he himself is very, very knowledgeable and he is a saintly personality and he is an acharya. But he still said, no, I am not acharya. I am not Qazi. I am just a mere devotee. Their philosophy is Anal Haq, which means I am God. That way, the philosophy of the Vedic impersonalists and the Muslim Sufis is the same. That is their problem, and that's similar in that regard, impersonal viewpoint, that they also think that I am God. But he said, no, I am not. I'm not that Sufi. I'm a pure devotee. I have surrendered my life and my soul to Lord Sri Chaitanya. Hare Krishna. So we got some understanding, some viewpoint about Islam. By a large extent, by and large, very similar to Vaishnava philosophy. Only little difference is there. They don't accept form, even though their acharyas know that God, Khuda has spiritual form, but their followers do not. Somehow or other, that is kept hidden, just like Sankaracharya. Haribol. So now it's open for discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhamma.
Hare Krishna.
So lot of complicated, but it's a good that some comparison is drawn. How fictional this book. It's apparently fictional. Maybe that time that was a need, but all the philosophies are brought together in a very nice way. Different philosophies and exposed step by step. It's amazing to see how gradual, like non-devotee to devotee, or maybe a Brahman, and understanding all the way it elevates you gradually, step by step, and
Yeah.
very, very nice on that. Thank you. But
Thank
I have always one question. Again, it's similar to that. When we talk about merging, that means merging. He wants to lose his identity, right? Merging somebody,
Merging.
merging
So that's
means you lose your identity. You don't want to have anything to do anything,
yeah.
so you lose your identity. This is the one. Another thing, to become a lord, like Mayavadi said that I am lord, you are lord. So both are different, isn't it? Losing identity and becoming a lord, they are not
It's
the
a
same thing.
Prabhupada says like it's like spiritual suicide, because that's the reason Vaishnavas don't like that. Because then when you lose your whole identity, then how can you serve the Lord with loving devotional service? That's why Vaishnavas don't want that, But they want to merge with the Supreme because they don't recognize the Supreme Parabrahma and simple Brahma. They say there's only one Brahma, and they want to merge back into that Brahma. And then they say that single Brahma, Supreme or not Supreme, also come under the influence of Maya. But when we study Vedas, Vedanta, according to their version, then that Brahma returns, then they want to merge. So that we become the Supreme, like that, The word
both
Supreme,
are different.
so they don't accept the word Supreme. They don't accept the word Supreme.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. Very nice. Thanks.
Any other point, questions?
So Prabhuji, so when we say Smarta Brahman, who are basically they are impersonalists, and Muslims and Christians, whoever believes that in God without the form, they are on the same, then all these are in the same platform, no?
The Christianity also has the same viewpoint: develop love of God, love Jesus. They say, right now, but their understanding of Jesus is not is a messenger, but Jesus, according to Islam, my understanding Christianity, and I took a course on that, that Jesus simultaneously is a human being and he's spiritual being simultaneously. Uh, so they say that Jesus died and then he came back. But our understanding, one is, one who is the great such a personality, they don't die, they disappear and appear. The birth and death, Krishna also explained, right? Birth and death here. But Janma karmach me divyam, evam yo veti tattvata, tyaktva deham na jana punajanma ma veti. So they say like that, the partial viewpoint of that. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Right.
So what was your original question? Maybe make sure I answered you.
So I was asking is, are these like Christians or Muslims or be it Smartha Brahmins who are basically impersonalists, so they are all on the same platform, right?
No, Christian is little bit different. Muslims, I told you that. Christian, I think, if I'm not wrong, correct me, and they have a viewpoint that God has a personal form. Okay, because Jesus Christ also had a personal interaction. Jesus, just like Muhammad Paigambar, he also had a personal face-to-face audience with the Supreme Lord, and he took down, just like in Christianity, Moses, when he went to that hill, and God gave all the messages that were inscribed on the rock platform, and he brought back, that becomes 10 commandments, right? One of the 10 commandments, that you treat others like you want yourself to be treated the way. There are 10 commandments. And ultimately, the bottom line of Islam and Christianity, just like we, also have developed love for God. But Christianity has, to my understanding, has a personal form. And I believe Muslim also have that. My understanding is that because Muhammad Paigambar did actually see personal form of the Lord. So they believe, but the reason they say that we have no capacity to give a form to the Lord, there is why fanatically they don't want to have any kind of deity. You understand the reason behind that?
Yeah.
Muhammad Paigambar said that God has a form, Khuda has a form, but we are unable. There's no way we can give any kind of form to Lord. That's beyond our capacity. That's why it's forbidden deity worship, deity form. That God should not be given any kind of form because we are limited, we are human beings. That's the reason, according to my understanding. But they all have their senior personalities, their saintly personalities, they believe in the personal form of God, and we develop love for God. And they do teach that develop love for God. If you love God, then you love your fellow beings also will love. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
But with one just this point of view, they will throughout be away from the nectar of
Yeah, so that's
our
why
philosophy. Throughout, they won't really get an opportunity even to experience, because they completely refuse it, that it
yeah.
has a form.
But see, but Muslim also chant not Hare Krishna, but they chant the beads, right? Khuda. And they have 5 times very strictly. Every Muslim is supposed to do namaz. Namaz means paying obeisances, that they do that, So, but you have to understand, problem is that their followers, they develop this terrible and forcefully convert others into Muslim. You cannot forcefully do that. You cannot forcefully demand love. God does not forcefully demand love from us. That is the wrong interpretation. But their original Muhammad Paigambar knew exactly the right way. Same way, Jesus Christ, thou shalt not kill. But again, uh, I don't want to preach because I don't know enough of Islam nor Christianity. So I'm not qualified to say anything authoritatively. What I just shared with you is just my limited understanding, and I could be wrong. However,
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I hope I have answered at least partially your question.
Yes,
Srimati
Professor.
Mataji.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other question point?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavata Pranam.
Oh, Shri welcome.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So wonderful session, Prabhu. Thank you very much. There's a lot of comparison. I was wondering, there's so much details in our Shastras, okay, which is being explained, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu. And you brought it in a very nice form. So I have one point, Prabhu. So if somebody, a Muslim in the Islam regime, he's following his rules and doing everything, and 5 times namaz and all that, and he will also get a liberation, but he will merge into that Brahman. Correct, Prabhu? We can say in that way. And maybe he will fall back because he get boredom over there, but he does also get it is at that standard.
Problem is that how can you love